you walk into Hackney Wick. I mean, I don't know, time gets a bit slower, cars drive a bit slower, people walk down the middle of the roads. You know, if you did that in other parts of London, you'd be killed. You know, there's an energy here that's very different.
It seems to be like this one little part of London that it's in the middle of a massive city, but it's kind of got like a small town feel to it. Everyone knows their neighbours, and it's also just really creative.
I came in a time where into the area where it was naturally and purely about creativity, communication, and the force that keeps everybody as a community.
It feels like at times it's like a little island state, and like we call it like the Hackney Wick bubble.
So it used to be like a big industrial area, and then when that kind of started breaking down and industry moved other places, it kind of became a cheap place for people to live. So I think a lot of community housing was built, and then a lot of artists moved into the empty warehouse spaces and created this artist hub community.
A lot of people came here because I think a lot of people came here, including myself, who were having some sort of minor crisis in their life or major crisis, or they came to find themselves, you know, maybe their sexuality, maybe their artistic ideas, maybe their personality, maybe they're running away from something, maybe they're trying to find something. And I think there's a lot of people in the area that are like that, and that's quite a nice thing in a way. It's a place where people find themselves. You know.
I grew up in Australia, but I'm actually South African, and I always felt that there was a missing piece of community because I didn't ever feel like I belonged anywhere. And I came to the UK, and I came to London especially searching for the space where I was going to be able to become a musician and take my music and my creativity seriously.
I don't remember or recalling living in a place where it's so concentrated with creative people in one place.
Whenever you combine creative people with a creative space, then amazing things happen.
So I got to see kind of like so many big empty spaces that were affordable at the time. I had lots of potential to design and imagine and test out some these nice ideas I had.
It's having literally this network of amazing people who are really interested in collaborating at the tip of your fingers. Like you could literally just walk down the road, go get a drink and start talking about your project, and then boom, there's 10 people who know someone who could help with something, and then these beautiful projects get made.
The thing that I enjoy most about it is like forging relationship over times and repetition.
I'm always surrounded by other artists and creatives, and everyone around here is so productive. So it's been a real push to me to kind of make something of my work.
We create our own ideas and then they return the favor. It's interesting because this is the most strong concept of how this works around this area in here. It's insane how it keeps giving. No matter what you give it, it gives back exactly what people been given.
As a multi-layered, multicultural, multi-aged, generational community all living on top of each other and kind of interacting and helping each other, and a kind of microcosm of what Hackney actually is or was, which is the same thing really.
Usually the divide is kind of like the arts community and the residents community, and that's the worst example of a divide. Kind of like there's loads of artists in that residential community, and kind of a lot of the artists or the way they're seen, they're like, well, some of them are not artists. Some of them are just living there.
There's been a culture for the last few years now, and I think a lot of people from those areas feel, and this is me putting words in their mouth, but feel like they're not wanted in certain sections of the community, which is upsetting because I mean, at least from my perspective, I don't think it is true, and I think Hackney Wick is based around, you know, building community and knowing your neighbours.
In any community, tensions arise and things change, and people fall in love, people fall out, people, you know, resent each other. You know, there's constant conflict and tension.
Turn your music down. No.
At the same time, there's constant kind of creative energy and collaborative spirit and very friendly, you know, friendly people. So
creative people create spaces, and they bring an energy and a vibrance to areas, and that's what everyone gets attracted to. And then the very people who create the culture and create the energy in the space get forced out, because there is no protection, and creatives get paid awfully.
You know, the best branding for these developments has been this authentic, creative community. Yet, they don't invest anything into actually making sure it's still around. It's like, oh, this is a great thing, and buy your flat, and area change. Sorry, yeah, we changed it.
I didn't like in a more like general matter how the capitalistic movement crashed into the area. It was absolute crashing in with as a force.
I was living at Victoria Wharf, just on Fish Island, and the unit I was in was being demolished while we were living in it. So for a year we didn't have an external wall, it was just a plastic sheet.
How is that?
Oh, so illegal, so illegal. Yeah, the rent was still like 620 quid. It was wild, it was absolutely wild.
And then from a warehouse where 5 people used to live, all of a sudden it's 20 people living, where someone who's been holding the documents or the lease, pretending to be a landlord and starting to build extra rooms and inhumane ways.
We've lost Tower Space now, which for 12 years it was like the only like gallery that was open every single day.
There were many iconic buildings around here. Sadly, they were pushed to make room for new developments.
There's a big plan, and none of this exists in it. The climbing centre doesn't exist. Everything apart from like 2 buildings are being demolished, and
it's like the fringes of the city are slowly expanding, and it keeps pushing out more and more, and that's what's happening here.
Literally, like we saw it in Shoreditch, we saw it in Dalston, and now like we're seeing it in Hackney Wick.
Because of the fast pace of change and aggressive kind of a way of change that's happening physically to the area, it also affects people mentally.
You know, people sometimes you just want to stop fighting and just leave us alone. You know, stop making us anxious that someday this will be demolished, or you know.
It's really heart-sore to see people who've literally called this place home for so long having to look elsewhere and move away from their communities just so that they can continue their work.
Of course, change has to happen, and Hackney's a very welcoming place, and it welcomes new people into the area. But it angers me that it's been taken away.
Once people are here, or even before they move in, like they're still people, you know, and they're going to be part of your community, or one part of your communities, and they need to be welcomed. But they need to be welcomed in a way which is not kind of scary or resentful, but actually shows kind of this kind of cultural identity that I was talking about earlier. It's kind of like it's really, really important to have that as an understanding of how you base all your decisions and how you interact with. And it also hints at, you know, this making sure that the historic context is respected and kind of voiced and put out there and is accessible to people. Otherwise, there's just going to be so much disparity and disconnection between all these different communities that are moving in.
When someone's keen to join the space and join the environment and like are willing to help out, that really is what makes everything happen, because before that, you really are just like a few people trying to do everything, and it's really difficult.
It's a little kind of pond off the mainstream of the river where it swirls around a bit, and people kind of just go, oh, this is actually quite nice, you know. Maybe everyone could be like this, you know.
Okay, so one of my top memories.
We decided to make a jam in the place.
One of my favourite memories is when the climbing centre first opened.
There's about 400 people here, and everybody, like, we brought down chairs from our terrace, like everybody brought chairs from the surrounding places.
We got married at Hackney Town Hall.
Oh.
And but my parents came from Australia. They'd never visited me overseas before.
Bit by bit, everybody started to bring their arts, and we were hanging, painting, and it kept building up until the event.
Just amazing moment of people starting to climb who hadn't climbed before, more experienced climbers, and just a really tight-knit group that was engaging with the local community and really growing something. That's a really strong memory for me.
They had huge speakers and they blasted it. It was just post-COVID, like nobody had been dancing in ages and everybody was just like total ecstasy. It was absolutely amazing.
We also had a party at a warehouse that was actually in Manor House after the wedding.
And it was all uncurated, unplanned. It was everybody finding a free spot, a free corner or a chair to do their thing, to be part of this whole event.
And it started raining, but that just added to it. Like everybody was totally like in the moment.
Like for the first time, they really understood why I live, like where I live, and why I've been away from home for so long. And they just, all of a sudden, they were like, okay, yeah, this is where she belongs.
And I don't think it's going to get much better. I think it's just going to turn into another Shoreditch.
If someone comes and sweeps it away and builds luxury flats on it, more the fool them, because the people who are buying these flats are kind of, they're enticed into the area because of the culture that we've created and other artists have created and lots of people have created for maybe like 20 or 30 years. I mean.
And I think people from around here will move somewhere else and make wherever that they go beautiful, hopefully.
You know, even when you leave the Wick, you always take, like the Wick goes with you, and it's your responsibility to then do your best to create connections with people who have, you know, similar interests to you or creative interests to you, and facilitate that connection.
Communities like this will always exist, but I think Hackney Wick has been a particularly spectacular example of it.